Hello, everyone. I'm going to start a new series, and this one is going to be about the missing and murdered Indigenous women, which is an epidemic of violence against Indigenous women in Canada, the United States, and Latin America. I have been doing some research for a while, and I kind of wanted to hold off so I could just do the full series all in a row, but the deeper I dive into it, the more I come up with. And so if I wait, it's going to be a while. So I'm just going to go ahead and start this video as the first series or first part of the series. And it's basically two topics, which is some basic statistics about it, and then the ending of the video I will go over what is called the Highway of Tears in British Columbia. So every time I start looking into something, I find something else about it that needs to be talked about. No guarantees on how long this series is going to be. But across Latin America, it is estimated that Indigenous women and girls are disproportionately the victims of femicide. Femicide, or feminicide, is a hate crime broadly defined as the intentional killing of women and girls because they are female. This term was coined by author Diana E. H. Russell in 1976. According to a report by the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, representatives from Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. have resolved to work together as part of the North American Working Group on Violence Against Indigenous Women and Girls. This has become a mass movement in the U.S. and Canada to bring awareness through organizing marches, building a database of the missing, holding community meetings, as well as city council and tribal council meetings. They also conduct domestic violence training and other informational sessions for the police. In September 2016, the government of Canada, under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, established a national inquiry called National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. According to the inquiry's backgrounder, between the years of 1980 through 2012, Indigenous women and girls represented 16% of all female homicides in Canada, while only 4% of the female population lived in Canada. A 2014 report by the RCMP titled Missing and Murdered Aboriginal Women, a National Operation Overview, founded that more than 1,000 Indigenous women were murdered over a span of 30 years. From 2001 to 2015, the homicide rate for Indigenous women in Canada was almost 6 times as high as the homicide rate for other women, representing 4.82 per 100K population versus 0.82 per 100K. The NWAC has documented 582 cases since the 1960s, with 39% after 2000, though advocacy groups say that many more women have been missing in Canada, with the highest number in British Columbia. Notable cases have included 19 women killed in the Highway of Tears murders, and some of the 49 women from the Vancouver area murdered by serial killer Robert Pickton, which I will be covering in a different video. In the USA, Native American women are more than twice as likely to experience violence than any other demographic. 1 in 3 Indigenous women is sexually assaulted during her lifetime, and 67% of those assaults are perpetrated by non-Indigenous perps. The Federal Violence Against Women's Act, known as the VAWA, was reauthorized in 2013, which gave tribes jurisdiction to investigate and prosecute felony domestic violence offenses involving both Native American offenders as well as non-Native offenders on reservations. In 2019, the House of Reps, led by the Democratic Party, passed H.R. 1585, Violence Against Women's Reauthorization Act of 2019, by a vote of 263 to 158, which was intended to increase tribes' prosecution rights further. However, that bill was not taken up by the Senate, which at the time had Republican majority. In my opinion, they need to try again. Now, for the second part of this video, I want to discuss a little bit about the Highway of Tears. The term Highway of Tears refers to the 700 kilometers or 430 miles stretch of Highway 16 from Prince George to Prince Rupert, British Columbia, which has been the site of the murder and disappearance of a number of mainly Indigenous women since 1969. Government organizations and Indigenous organizations have different estimates of the number of victims along the highway. Police identify 18 murders and disappearances, 13 of them being teens. Other organizations placing the number closer to 40. The problem is the RCMP requires for the crime to have happened within a mile of Highway 16, 97, or 5, and their count rejects all cases that take place elsewhere along the route. Many people hitchhike along this stretch of highway because they do not own cars and there is a lack of public transit. The Highway of Tears murders have led to initiatives by the British Columbian government to dissuade women from hitchhiking, such as billboards along the highway warning women of the potential risks. A few people have been convicted in cases related to the Highway of Tears. 3 serial killers, Brian Peter Arp, Edward Dennis Isaac, and Cody Legbekoff. A lot of these things I am totally going to mispronounce, but I'm trying. Some of the murders have been linked to Bobby Jack Fowler, as well as others who will be named in the next video. Some victims are still unfound, and families are under the impression that the police are not doing all that they can to bring closure to these cases. The next video that I upload will be pretty long because it's going to include the names of the victims as well as a little bit of other information about them, including who killed them if they have been convicted. Racism may have hindered many of the investigations. Families of and the advocates for the victims of the Highway of Tears have stated that systematic racism undermined the investigations. According to the statements, police did not properly examine the Indigenous women's death, instead simply concluding that they died by suicide or from drug overdoses. Many advocates for the bus service along the Highway 16 many advocates for a bus service along Highway 16 since the lack of public transit access likely encouraged many of the victims to hitchhike. In 2017, the British Columbia government began operating a bus service in the area, and they announced in 2018 that 5,000 people used the buses in the first year. Even with a bus line in place, there was a murder in August of 2021. If you're in that area, please stay safe.